Well, good morning. Good afternoon to some of you. Good early morning to some of you on the West Coast. My name is John Carroll. I'm the CEO and founder of the Service Council. I'm also intended to be co-author of this new concept, the Service is Humanity, which is coming about here. I'm joined by my colleague. Now I can actually call you colleague. Like colleague
Yeah.
is generally speaking, right? You've been an advisory board member of the council for, gosh, Bob, since like almost the inception of the company.
Yeah.
And now we are colleagues here in this mission of bringing this book to life. How you doing, Bob? Good morning.
I'm doing great. I'm doing great, John. It's great to be a part of this and be part of something I think is going to be great for the industry as we go forward over the next couple of years putting this together. And for my background, for people that don't know me, so I just recently retired from Dell Technologies after 26 years in the services business, all in services, all with services technology. In my last role, I actually ran a business where we did all tech support globally for our PC business. I had 5,000 agents. I had 15 to 20,000 third-party folks working for us, every country in the globe, 30-something languages. So looking forward to bringing some of that experience of both from Dell and from working with people in the industry to our concept here.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, we're gonna tap some of that experience in terms of the genesis of this book and how it comes to life. But for those listening, Service is Humanity has been something that the Service Council and myself have been sort of touting and building energy around in market for, oh gosh, the last 8 years or so, where we talk as an organization about industry best practices, and oftentimes it's all about customer experience. It's all about profit, operating profit, and cost reduction efforts, and all the good things around automation. And what we thought was a good idea a couple of years back was to recognize those companies and those executives that were exemplar in their approach to aiding and empowering their team to do special things. That if you really extract those brands that we know and love in life, there's something special, there's something magical, right? Disney's magical, right? Make it a magical day when that human connection is had within that customer experience, whether it be consumer or business. And over the years, we've recognized 1 to 2 people. Bob is actually one of our reigning Services Humanity Award recipients during his time at Dell with their approach to diversity. We have recognized other organizations such as AAA, Dish Network, Kydell Ortho. We recognize the Home Depot and Schneider Electric, Southwest Airlines, Ritz-Carlton, Disney, all the way back to time when we started kicking this thing off, Philips Healthcare, among others. And for various reasons, right? It might be that, they have a humanity-driven approach to building a diverse team. It might be that they're rewarding and recognizing their personnel for doing great things within the customer setting. It might be that their organization has this mission, vision, principles, and values that points to and signals that what they're doing for their community is to create goodness, right? It's not just about that operating profit that we always talk about. And so I shared with Bob, this intention with this concept where, annually we've been recognizing organizations. How do we take it forward in a way that actually builds a curriculum to it, right? There is a potion here. There's a magic potion in terms of people, process, technology, and platforms that aid in this approach. And as automation and autonomy continue to dominate the conversation and become more and more paramount to service delivery and execution, where are we losing that human connection in that digital, that digitization of the customer experience? We believe that the human connection is going to be paramount moving forward. We think that it's both, not one or the other. It's and, not or. And so we are formalizing this concept here. We will be bringing a mini book, which will be released this year in time at the Smarter Services Executive Symposium. Save the date, September 8th through the 10th in Chicago. Registration is now open. We hope you can join us. Bob will be there. He'll be on stage with me at some point or another, or maybe more than once. We're going to be formalizing a book that will be released in the first half of 2026. So lots of exciting times and lots of things that we're building energy around as we go here. So, Bob, I thought for today what we would do is maybe take our listeners on a journey in terms of, some of the things you encountered across your career as an operating executive in terms of cultivating this type of a culture, right? So why this book can become important to other organizations. And so
Yeah,
you
I mean,
talked a little bit about Dell, but please, yeah.
I'll actually give you an example from this morning
Awesome.
that I experienced. And so I had to go pick up my wife's car from a car dealership, just getting routine maintenance. They had installed a new virtual assistant when you call them. And trying to navigate the virtual assistant when all I was asking for is my car ready? It gave me all these different prompts. And I finally start screaming into the phone, agent, agent, agent. And it finally gets me to a real person.
Yeah.
And so that is a great example of putting technology in place that actually detracts from your customer experience and what the engagement is that you want to. You think you're being more efficient, you're actually upsetting your customers. And so and I think throughout my career as whether it was at Dell or even when I was in management consulting or other parts of the business, um, what I would see and what I would try and focus on is, okay, what is that experience going to be ultimately for the customer that's engaging with us, whether it's internal experience or an external experience.
Yeah.
And when we're putting technology in place, is that going to enhance that or detract from that? I remember
Yeah.
distinctly, as things were, this is more than a decade ago, but as we were moving more to the app-based world, um, we had put in some technology that we wanted customers to use, and the assumption was that they would always be standing in front of a PC terminal when people were moving to doing things on their phone, and it wasn't built to be used on the phone. And it's like you've got to understand that the simplification and making the engagement that much easier for customers is what they're looking for. And then when they really want a connection, if they can't get something solved, you've got to have that human element as a part of that. And you can't necessarily replace the human element with a technology that's going to detract from the experience. And so I've seen that throughout my career. I've seen other companies that have done it well. I've seen companies that have not done it so well. And I've seen, I used to manage when I was at Dell hundreds of partners across our ecosystem around the globe. Some of them were very proactive about making sure that technology was leveraged to create a better connection with that human element, and others were more on, okay, we're going to drive efficiency, and it really detracted from what they were trying to do.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And you think about sort of, the different channels where customers are seeking support, and many organizations are in this mindset of shifting left and mobile experience and on the go and meeting the customer where they want to be met, whether it be at home or in the office or wherever. I wrote a blog about this past weekend. I was shopping at Whole Foods, and man, I'll tell you, I got truck stomped by the grocery shoppers for those mobile on the go, shoppers, if you will, that are
Yeah.
shopping for that mobile experience to bring it to the home, to deliver it right to the home. And it's like, look, the customer right in front of you is not less important than the fictitious, invisible customer that's in home that wants their groceries delivered, in a certain time frame, right? So there's some trickery around, you can't depart care for that human experience when you have certain channel preferences that come into the mix, and that type of thing. And when we look at those companies that do a really good job of like empowering the customer or the employee to be customer centric. I always talk about the Ritz Carlton and the Joshie the Giraffe story. I talk about Disney and the Dancing Princess. I talk about Luca and the Lego engagement, and those employees in the moment, right? Those every customer touch point, opportunity to convert, whether you deepen the relationship or cause it to go away in the opposite direction, those employees felt the empowerment to do something special for those people in those situations. And that there's a secret, there's a fabric that layers across an organization in the complexities that you talked about that aid in that empowerment, that they are able to do the kindness and take that approach to kindness and care, that resonates at the customer level, that drives customers for life. And what are some of the brands that you look at, Bob? We've talked a lot about this. What are some of the brands that you've referenced in your storylines, helping to build a culture within your organizations?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned some of them. I think AAA is another great example.
Yeah.
Um, if you look at when you need service and how you engage with them and how you're able to go um, track that service, I have found um, Delta Airlines, actually, I've had good experience with. If you need to get in touch with someone, you can, at least from my experience. And I found that to be a very positive experience. Um, and and then there's always there's kind of the local enterprises, right? And there's a lot of local places that we will go to. In Texas, if you're in Texas, HEB. HEB is the large supermarket in Texas, and they are phenomenal at their experience and what they do and how they engage with folks. And um, uh, those experiences that are local, those are the things that I think as businesses grow, they start to struggle with. How do they make that experience the same
Yeah.
or better as they get bigger? And that's really where the secret sauce is. It's the connection points, because you go into whether it's your local coffee shop or your grocery store, or you're getting something repaired or whatever it might be, that local connection and that experience you get, which tends to be a lot more personal, that stays with you and it brings you back.
Indeed.
And we have another local hardware store that um, that we'll use here because it's got a personal connection to people, and they're always looking out to do the right thing, and it's not and people have been trained there for a long time, and so I think taking that human connection is really important, because in today's world, with the advent of mobility and social
Yeah.
media and everything, and you can see this in what our kids do, those connections, those human connections, are starting to get diminished, and it's really what we're all built off of. And so
100%.
um, being able to have an enterprise where you can bring in those human connections and have that as part of what you do from an engagement with your customers, no matter where you are, what language you do, or whatever, I think will continue to enhance those relationships and bring people back to you that'll buy more. And your example on shopping, like when you're physically in the store, you're more likely to buy things that weren't on your list because you see it in
Correct.
the store. And so you want to treat those customers with probably even more connection than somebody who ordered online and they're just filling the cart. And so
Yeah.
um, I think it all gets back to that connection in as much real time as possible.
That's outstanding. Yeah. And so a couple things in there. So you're absolutely right. The human needs human connection. If you go back to, early days when we were all in school, we learned about, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and that's that pyramid thing.
Yep.
And, what is required for human survival. And it starts off with physiological needs at the base of the pyramid. It goes up to safety and security. Love and belonging is right in the middle, right in the center of the pyramid. And that talks about, friendship and family and intimacy. And as a customer, you do become part of the family when there's a personalized relationship and partnership that is impactful, and it's mutually impactful, and there's shared success, and each other, right? And each other's preferences and capabilities. And So there's that. And then the other thing you talked about is, this whole, small versus large, right? And that's where the mechanics of purpose become really important. And, how do you scale? How do you standardize and govern? But also, how do you allow for some of those intricacies that need to be, built across a multi-dimensional organization where there's cultural nuances in one region versus another, and you don't want to stifle innovation at the same time. So I'm curious, as you've led multinationals and you talked about this a little bit already, do you believe purpose is a moving target? And, how do you standardize? Does it evolve over time? Do you allow for that sort of flexibility as you think about that big, intricate enterprise that might be multinational?
Yeah, I think when you look at large complex organizations, you've got to start with what is your mission, what is your purpose, as you talked about,
Yeah.
um, and those tend to be very aspirational, and they're aspirational because you want your team members and your customers to aspire to a certain experience or impact that you're trying to make. And um, over my career, the different organizations I'm part of, obviously I was at Dell the most part of my career.
Yeah.
Those change over time because the company changes over time, or the customers, more importantly, the customers change over time, how they consume, what they want to be a part of. And so you've got to keep looking at every couple of years. You don't do it every year, but I think you look every
Yeah.
couple of years. What is the purpose you have for the organization? And then how do you facilitate that throughout the entire organization? As I said,
Yeah.
I uh, I had an organization of 5,000 team members at Dell. That was part of an organization of over 100,000
Yeah.
globally, and some of the companies I worked with that would provide subcontract services to us had employee bases that were similar in size, and that is a really hard thing to do, is to get everybody aligned and
Yeah.
what the overall mission is. But you have to start somewhere. And what you have to do then as leaders, and as leaders in services, is how do you stay on the message and give people real examples that they can connect with, because
Yeah.
people will believe and follow your purpose of your organization if they can make a personal connection to it. I found that time and time again. If they can't feel like they're part of what you're trying to do as an organization, whether it's your own organization or a broader one you're a part of, they're not going to be on board. And so
Yeah.
one of the things I always tried to do when I was in my leadership roles was, how do I make that connection? How do I celebrate when people have done things that align with the purpose? How do I celebrate um, people that have gone above and beyond what they needed to do? How do I admit where we did some things where it maybe didn't align with what we were supposed to be doing? And I
Yeah.
think, again, all those examples lead to better connections and engagement with people on an individual basis. And what I've always said, and I know most of the audience knows this, is services is a people business. No matter how much technology you put into it, and
Yeah.
the technology keeps growing by leaps and bounds every single day, if not every single hour. It's really about those connections that people make that will bring people back to get service from you again. And so
Absolutely.
it's leveraging technology and being a part of that purpose and that mission to really go enhance that service opportunity.
And I look at those exemplars we were talking about before, Ritz-Carlton, Disney, and Lego. They're category leaders, right? There's a reason why they're category leaders. It's because of this approach, right? They have a maniacal focus on the customer experience. And then I look at, some of you make a great point, right? It's not just always about the rewarding the positive behaviors. It's about identifying where we stepped in it, and where we might have made a mistake, and where we can refine. And, I look at the automotive sector, BMW. Everybody probably heard the story when they introduced heated seats, and they tried to
Yep.
digitize and sell it as a subscription, as a service, right? It was this, digitization as a service methodology they tried to introduce to their customers. It fell flat, like real flat.
Right.
And but you know what didn't fall flat was customer sentiment. Customer sentiment dropped. If you look at the period, there's an automotive index on customer sentiment. BMW dropped, I think, 7 points the year after they tried to take that, that transformational journey around monetization of those capabilities in an as a service model. So you can do things the right way, you can do things the wrong way. How do you measure the success of sentiment and employee morale, and how that aligns with company mission and principles, and
Yeah.
ultimately lands at the feet of the customers? What are some of the metrics you looked at?
So I think, look, there's an empirical way you do that through um, performance metrics that you can do, whether it's surveying your customers, whereas looking at sentiment analysis. I mean, there's technologies you can use with it that I had used. You can listen to scripts or read scripts, and even now with the advent of AI,
Yeah.
really get some depth of understanding of customer sentiment from how customers are engaging with you, and what your agents or people that are engaging with the customers may be doing through no matter what channel they engage with you on. There's your operational metrics that are going to have some impact to the service event, whether it's how long it takes you to do something, um, how quickly it can be repaired, how many times do you have to have a revisit. All of those things you pull the levers on to look at, okay, how do I make the experience that much better for a customer, both internally and externally? And I think it's important that you got to make sure your internal customers, whether they're your agents or your field service people or whoever it might be, that you've got a measure of that sentiment as well as what your external customers are doing. Because if you don't have great internal people, you're not going to have a great experience with your customers. And so there's also employee surveys that you can do. We traditionally would do in the past that gives you great feedback. I was known for um, every one of the surveys we would do at Dell had an open commentary, and I would read every single comment on the order of 12 to 20,000 comments every year, and so which took some time to get through. But I felt like, okay, if you listen to your people that are on the ground and servicing our customers and what their problems and frustrations are, then that's going to make it an even better experience for your customers if you fix those things. And the other thing I would say is not just the empirical data, but then you got to go talk to people. And again, back to the connections. So you've got to talk to your external customers. If you're not spending time with your external customers and understanding what their mission is and what their goals are and what their frustrations are and what's their measures of success are, you've got to be able to go do that. Um, you've got to talk to your internal customers, because it's extremely rare when you're in a role where you own everything for an engagement. Even if you're at the CEO or COO level, you're dependent upon other people to get things done on your behalf. So you've got to go talk to those people. I would traditionally do we'd call them roundtables with my leaders, and I'd also do it with my frontline people who were without any leaders in the room, so you could hear unfiltered what's really happening. And I think you've got to do all of those things, have the empirical data, the measures of your specific business, but then you got to have the conversations and make those connections. And then the more you have those conversations and the more you recognize people for having those open conversations, the more they're going to tell you about how to make a better connection with your customers. And so
Yeah.
I think all those things are important.
There's two things that I distill from that commentary that you just gave, Bob. One is the importance of the employee experience and what impact that has on the customer experience, right? The customer experience has been referenced as the overflow of the employee experience, right? So if the employee experience is not positive, then how does the customer experience equal a positive experience? Right. And so we've seen this evolution of satisfaction, both inside the organization and external in the customer, evolve to, from CSAT to Net Promoter, would you recommend us, now customer effort and employee effort. How how difficult is a day in the life to seek and receive or to deliver value, right? So that's something I distilled from your conversation. And then the other thing is don't always trust the data.
Right.
Inspect, get that human connection going where you're validating what the data is telling you, and you're connecting, and you're presenting an opportunity for that communication mechanism where you might learn something new, right? If you give someone the opportunity to communicate, they might come with something insightful that you didn't capture in data. And so that human connection can afford those opportunities to extract even greater value, whether it's you plugging in with your team to learn about their sentiment and how challenged they are, or going to the customer and listening. So
Yeah, and I'd
listening,
also
communication.
say be willing to stop measuring certain things.
Yeah.
And I'll give you a great example. A classic measure in the tech support world is average handle time. How long is it?
Yeah.
How long is your agent, if it's a phone agent, on the call with the customer?
Yeah.
I stopped looking at it because what we realized was that what's more important is what's the outcome that the customer's having, and streamlining the opportunity so it starts average handle time becomes almost irrelevant. I'm sure you need to look at it to kind of manage your workload, but to measure an agent on it, we really kind of stopped looking at that because it was more about what's the experience that the actual customer's feeling and
Absolutely.
engaging on.
Right. If we're looking at the stop clock and the stopwatch in terms of how long it takes, and that's the single message, the single metric that we're using to dictate success here, that could have a significant impact on the erosion of quality, right?
Correct.
So you've got to be really careful about building a system of metrics where you look at, yeah, you want to look at those outcome metrics because you have to, right? You need to capacity plan. So you need to understand, is my team performing at an optimal level? Are they completing enough jobs? Are their utilization rates high to equate to a winning formula for our organization for us to meet capacity? But you also have to look at those causal metrics that are eroding to some of those outcome metrics. And so we talk a lot about that in terms of those organizations that are creating a winning formula, or looking at the leading and the lagging metrics, if you will. And why don't we look at one last question, Bob? I think we can fit one more in here. What are some of the roadblocks? You've talked a lot about the building blocks. What are some of the roadblocks? What are some of the things that you've stepped in and learned over your career that are like, whoa, stay away from this?
Well, I mean, back to the connection point, sometimes people can be the roadblock because it's like, wow,
Yeah,
we've done this for years, so why would we change?
yeah,
And so you've just got to be cognizant of that. I
yeah,
think, look, there's also, at least I think in a lot of large organizations that have been around for a while, there's a lot of technical debt that they carry, and meaning their IT infrastructure has been around for a long time, and they just keep building on top of how it first existed. And I think that becomes a challenge for people to really move fast.
yeah,
I think you've got to, back to the mission and culture. You've got to have a culture that's willing to, in some cases, go break things
yeah,
for the benefit of the customer, both internal and external. So that means taking calculated risks, and and again, you've got to reward people for taking those, or celebrate people for taking those calculated risks. So I think it's kind of all the elements around your people and the culture that you've put in place. What are the processes you have, and how willing are you to go change those processes and the tools that then are baked in on top of those processes, and do all of that to enable change. Because again, everybody in here has got some element of technology in their service organization, and that changes every single day, and you've got to be willing to move as fast as that changes, and sometimes that means you got to go break some things. And
yeah,
you can see resistance to that because it means uncertainty for people. It means uncertainty for their roles.
yeah,
If you look at the advent of AI, technology into everything that we do, there's uncertainty around, okay, what does that mean for a role that used to be X now is going to look like Y? And so I think all of those things are elements that you have to overcome as you continue to evolve your services engagement.
I think you're spot on. I think service is having a moment right now where, it's important, has never been greater. But B, there is a significant reinvention happening right now, with digitization and the autonomous journeys that everybody's attempting to go on, and so it's critical that you think about the intersection points between human experience, human augmented experience, and automated experience, and where do those things come together. And so I'm super pumped up here about this book here, Bob. I'm really, I pinched myself to be able to tap your experience in terms of all the things you've done in your career, and for us to come together on this has been, just a career moment for me. So thank you. And
I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a lot of fun.
it is, and inside the book, we're going to build out a framework. So it's going to start with understanding your why. It's going to lead into, how do you build your foundation? We're going to outline the X principles. We haven't landed on the principles, a quantitative number of principles, because we're debating them. We're thinking how they might merge into one versus the other, but it's somewhere around the 8 to 10 principles here of services humanity. How do you establish a deployment mechanism for this type of approach? How do you measure the success? How do you think about deploying situational management in terms of embracing services humanity tenets, if you will? And across the book, we're going to be, documenting real life case studies, some of the brands you mentioned today, and some that you didn't, some of those locals, if you will, that will help you sort of refine the approach and distill some of the critical ingredients that, come together into this magical dinner, if you will. So,
right.
Bob, I'm super pumped. This book, our mini book, will be available in time at the Smarter Services Symposium, September 8th through the 10th. Bob will be there with me. We can talk to you, set up some time to sit down and talk to you about where we are in the journey with the forthcoming book in 2026, early part of 2026. So thank you for listening today. We welcome you to engage with us and learn more. And Bob, I'm looking forward to this adventure.
Likewise, it's going to be a lot of fun, as I said, and looking forward to bringing this all forward to everyone that's out there.
Outstanding. We'll see you on the next time. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, y'all. Bye.